the consultant on this project to really evaluate the existing review the existing monitoring well network, look into the possible expansion of that network, as well as developing some sampling and analysis plans and things to manage a full monitoring well network program for the Casper Aquifer. So,
thank you. Good evening, Mr. Acey.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. As Ben said, my name is Ryan Acey with Tri-Hydro Corporation. We've been selected as the contractor to evaluate the existing Laramie monitoring well network program. As many of you know, we've adopted a combined Laramie and Albany County Casper Aquifer plan back last year, and one of the recommendations that were part of that plan was a comprehensive monitoring network and sampling plan. Within that plan, there was some recommendations for some well locations, some existing wells, and as well as the actual sampling analysis plan that would go along with that. So we've taken on that, and we're building on those recommendations within the program. I think we go this way. Thank you. So the objectives of that are to basically establish a baseline water quality for the Casper Aquifer, and then within that monitor changes within the water quality, and potentially some of the wells would act as potential sentinel wells towards our production wells, so that in the event of a release upstream of the production wells, that we could act in a reasonable manner to shut those wells down, such that we wouldn't get contaminants within the production wells. Another objective is to provide better understanding in general of the overall hydrologic conditions of the aquifer, particularly how water and contaminants are moving through the fracture system. Oops. There we go. So that kind of builds on this initial figure here. This is the geology of the Casper Aquifer Protection Area. The blue is the outcrop of the Casper Formation. Many of the black lines and the red lines that you see on there are folds and faults, which create additional fractures within the geology. It's composed predominantly of sandstone and limestone, so it's hard rock. And so when, in the past, when it was folded and faulted, it broke and makes fractures. Those fractures can exist as horizontal and vertical fractures, so that could potentially act as conduits for groundwater contaminants to get into the aquifer system. Another component of the geology are the drainages, which act as sort of funnels for surface water to then penetrate into the aquifer system as well. So along with the geology that that have shown, in evaluating the existing wells that we have for monitoring, we also looked at potential and existing contaminant sources, things like residential areas, septic systems. That would be the little purple dots that you'll see sort of in the center and towards the north portion of the map. We've got a fueling station, some auto maintenance, some auto dealerships within the Casper Aquifer Protection Area. I-80 represents a potential and existing contaminant source, as well as the Union Pacific Railroad runs through there. Have some areas with urban runoff, parking lots, just paved roads, those types of things contribute potential contaminants to the aquifer. And then we've also got the Mountain Cement Quarry that is down to the south, the southern portion of the aquifer that potentially contributes contaminants as well. So we looked at at those items, oh, and I should point out the green dots on there are kind of the point source type contaminants. So those are the things like, you know, a particular parking lot or the fueling station or the dealerships that you'll see on there. And so those were laid out within the Casper Aquifer Protection Plan. So as I mentioned, as part of the recommendations from the plan, there were some recommendations of wells that could be included. Existing wells that the city already monitors on a somewhat regular basis, mostly for water levels. There's 10 of them. This map shows the northern half, just to kind of zoom in on the aquifer protection area a little more so you can kind of see where these are. At the north end, there's the spur monitoring well 6 is currently monitored. Monitoring well 41T3, 41T2, the triangle well you'll see on there, and then 2 wells that were installed near Imperial Heights Park as part of a study back in 2015. So those are already monitored currently, as I said, in a semi-regular basis. But we'd like to, part of the outcome of this project would be to develop that frequency and time frame for those to be monitored on a more regular basis. Looking to the south, the EQ number 1 is a well that's along I-80 just before you head into Telephone Canyon that has been monitored in the past. And then there's a couple of wells, Soldier MW5 and MW1, or Simpson MW1 are wells that are associated with the existing well field and the Simpson Springs to the south. So those 10 wells currently make up, I guess, the informal monitoring well network for Laramie. Within the CAP, there's a few other wells that were recommended or thrown out as options for wells that could be monitored going forward to enhance that existing well network. The UW quarry monitoring well is a well up to the very north, kind of on the back side of the spur anticline, associated with the existing quarry. Was one that was thrown out there. The Huntoon well is right in the middle of the residential area down towards the southern end of this map. Again, this is the northern half of the aquifer protection area. And I have on there the SHFCA number 1 well, but I was informed just before this meeting that that one's underneath the high school, so it no longer exists. So thanks Chris Moody to that information. So we'll be altering that location and probably recommending a well to fill in that location, as it's kind of would be kind of a key area within the aquifer potentially. And then the LAPCA is a well near Laprelle Park that we're looking at as a down gradient well. Would give us kind of just on the outskirts or on the very far western edge of the control or of the protection area. So that would be one that we'd be looking at continuing to monitor. And then here to the south, we've got a few more. The Huntoon number 2 well is another well that's near the Imperial Heights area, Sherman Hills area, that is an existing well that could be monitored. The Soul well is another down gradient well. That's outside of the Casper Aquifer protection area, but it would be considered a down gradient well that could be used to just monitor overall aquifer health. And then the MCMW number 7 and the Waitkus well, those are currently monitored by Mountain Cement as part of their monitoring program. And we would potentially use those, could potentially use those as monitoring points. One, to look at just effects from the quarry, as well as the fault system. There's a number of faults that come together in the area of the the MCMW number 7 well that potentially would give us an idea of what's going on in those fault systems. And as a note, the Mountain Cement annual reports. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question from the Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought while we're in it, when you're talking about the down gradient well, so maybe I should just ask, what would be the purpose of checking that? I would assume, like, if there were contamination, then you check the down gradient to see if it's been, like, cleared, or can you just explain that a little bit more?
The down gradient wells would give us an idea if there's something that we maybe missed on a more up gradient well, you know, because of the way the fault systems, the faults, sometimes things travel through there and can actually kind of go around potential wells, just depending on what fractures are connected to a certain degree. And so that would just give us kind of the backstop, I guess, for, and then from there we would probably look into more extensive sampling of some of the other wells to see if we could trace where it might be coming from.
Thank you for that clarification.
And then as a note, the Mountain Cement annual report is a public document, so accessing those results would allow us to not have to spend the money to sample additional wells. We'd have that information, and then if we were seeing contaminants of concern in anything there, we would be able to maybe act in that southern area around the quarry to do additional sampling or install additional wells of our own that we could then sample.
I have a question. Councillor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Athie, I don't know if you'll cover this, so I thought I'd bring it up and see if there's an answer for this. I know we have two main sources of water, the Snowy Range through the water treatment plant that comes into the city, and then also the aquifer. My question, and I've never been able to hear an answer to this, what is the annual capacity of the Casper aquifer, and if we pump it hard, have we ever got to the point where it is no longer a reliable source of water for the city? And I know it has to do with recharging and all that, but my question is this: have we ever had a year where there was not adequate water supply from the Casper aquifer?
To my knowledge, I don't believe we've ever pumped the aquifer enough to where we felt that we needed to shut down any wells or anything like that. I think traditionally we've run out of surface water before we've run out, and then the aquifer, the wells are used to make up that additional water. But I don't believe we've ever, it has gone numerous years where the water levels have dropped, and then we get a couple good snowpack years and the aquifer recharges. That's been my general understanding of how things have gone over the years, but I'm not as old as some people.
Follow up.
Thank you. Again, for capacity, do we know how deep the Casper aquifer is? I don't believe we've reached a point where we say we're at the bottom of the aquifer, or do you know if we have reached what is the depth of the aquifer? And another thing is, I don't know if it extends for miles and miles, or if it's just within maybe a few miles of the city limits. What is the actual area that the Casper aquifer is available?
So the Casper aquifer, it extends the length. I mean, it's under most of the Laramie Basin, all the way to like Sheep Mountain on the west. It's a big U-shaped basin, so it's plunging, it's dipping from the east to the west on the flanks of the Laramie Range to our east, and then it bottoms out a little bit west of Laramie, and then starts coming up again towards Sheep Mountain. So it's just a big U-shaped bowl there, holding a bunch of this water. I believe it's so it's, as I mentioned, it's made up of interbedded sandstone and limestone layers. So believe it's on the order of like 1,000 feet thick. Each one of those sandstone layers varies in thickness, 200 to 300 feet, and there's 5 of them. And so it's not all saturated as you go up towards the summit. Some of that's all still Casper formation, but it's not saturated. There's no water in it as you get higher up. So the thickness of the saturated zone varies to a certain degree, but I would say in general it's probably 500 to 600 feet of saturated thickness down to the top of the granite. As far as the capacity, I don't have a very good answer for you on that one. But I appreciate your question.
I've heard billions of gallons, and I've not heard anything to say that it doesn't have billions of gallons that's available. I know that at the peak, we pull out maybe 10 to 15 million gallons a day, but, I suppose we could eventually use it all up, but I've never heard that we have.
If we had enough years where we didn't get any recharge, we would potentially find the limits of the aquifer.
Thank you.
Let's see, so where are we at here? So in addition to the wells, the existing wells that we would potentially add to our monitoring well network, we've proposed to potentially drill a few new wells that could fill in some of the gaps and add value to the monitoring program. You'll note there's 5 wells on here that are labeled as the Turner monitoring wells, 1 through 5. These wells would potentially add to that overall understanding of the Casper aquifer. They're not really in the adjacent to any potential contaminants of concern, so they wouldn't be used in that capacity. They would mostly be kind of an overall kind of fact information gathering, data gathering capacity. So they're pretty low priority wells within the plan. They would potentially be fairly deep just because they're located fairly high up on the outcrop, which would make them fairly expensive to drill. I would say they're probably on the order of like especially the number 2, 3, 4, and 5 wells probably be in the neighborhood of 300 to 400 feet deep, and so could potentially be fairly expensive. The Turner number 1 monitoring well would probably be the highest priority of these wells if we were to choose one, and that one would likely be a slightly shallower well on the order of check my notes. Probably on the order of 100 to 150 feet deep, so a little more reasonable. And then looking to the south, we've got a few on this portion of the aquifer protection area. The TCMW2 well would potentially be a Pope kind of sentinel well, directly up gradient of the Pope well field production. And that is located, I believe it's a 1-year travel time, approximately 1-year travel time that from the Pope number 1 or Pope well field. That's how that was located. It also falls right on several faults So it would potentially give us some information in that regard. The MC4 well, is again, that one's in that area where there's many faults coming together, and then it would be a down gradient of the I-80 corridor as it comes out of Telephone Canyon. So potentially another monitoring point between the well fields and a potential contaminant source in I-80. And then the I-80 MW1 well was proposed in our study of the I-80 Telephone Canyon vulnerability study, which was done in 2014. Should remember that. That one is directly next to I-80 within Telephone Canyon, so upgrading of potentially where something might be released as they're coming down the canyon. So that was the impetus behind that one, and it lies on those red dotted lines on the map. There are fold system, so potentially some additional fractures there within the system, and could be conduits towards the well fields. The MC3 is again another potential sentinel well for the Soldier well. Again, that one's on a 1-year travel time, I believe, and so that's where that one would fall. And then one other note in terms of potential wells, we didn't include on this initial the initial plan would be if the city pursues developing the Simpson Springs as another production well area, we would recommend additional monitoring wells, especially since the Union Pacific Railroad goes right by there. The quarry would be upgrading of that area as well. So some additional monitoring there if that gets developed in the future, but that's not part of, wouldn't be recommended as part of this plan. Any other questions right now in terms of the monitoring wells? If not, I'll move on.
Councillor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Athey. On the one monitoring well on I-80, the potential proposed monitor well, since it's going through the canyon, how do you dig a well there since you're along the I-80? Do you start at the top of the hill or you're next to the highway?
So yeah, that's a good question. When we were doing that evaluation as part of that original study, we would have to work with YDOT to try to find something within the easement where we could get a well in there, and it's definitely limited. We looked at those a lot and talked with YDOT even at that time, and they said they could work with us potentially. So, and that was over 10 years ago, and a lot has changed at YDOT. So that would be something, if that well is recommended to go forward, it would take some cooperation. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, thank you for the presentation. A question about monitoring. Besides contaminants, can you just talk about what other data you can collect? Can you look at groundwater levels and the differences in these wells and start generating data year to year, maybe to Councillor Shumway's question about use and availability of water?
Correct. Yeah, that would be the idea, is that we would, specifically water levels would give us an idea of, how recharge is looking. And then just some of the general water quality parameters that I'll get into in just a bit, you can kind of see, to a certain degree, you can see how it's connected through certain fractures, and vertically and horizontally, you might be able to see a correlation between some of those water quality parameters that would give us an idea of where contaminants would move, and what things are most connected. So that would be the idea there. So now I will move on and start and talk about some of the sampling plan. So what we initially are looking at would be kind of a 5-year sort of baseline study. So we would do quarterly sampling of all the wells, and for a 5-year program that would look to kind of establish some baseline water quality trends, see if we can see any kind of seasonality within any of the analytes. And then once, after that 5 years, we would recommend that it be reevaluated and see if we could, maybe pare down the analyte list to a certain degree, or, and then look at maybe a subset of wells that could be monitored on a less frequent basis, but we would be doing sampling all the time, but not all, like say there's like 28 wells in that list that I just described. And so maybe going forward after the 5 years, we could pare it down to like say 10 wells semi-annually, but it would be a different set during each event, depending on what kind of trends we were seeing within that initial kind of baseline water quality. So that would save costs going forward, but that initial effort would cost more, obviously, but we'd have that baseline data set. So as you notice, most of the analytes on here I have quarterly, and then TPH, which would be associated with, so that's total petroleum hydrocarbons. So that would be sort of a precursor to, looking for gasoline or diesel type products. So if we had a hit from that TPH in a well, then we could go back and do additional sampling for the more discrete samples that, or analytes like benzene or gasoline range organics, diesel range organics, those kinds of things, to see what we're seeing there. Other things that we could add to the list might be pesticides and herbicides on a more like maybe every 2 to 3 years, something like that, just since they're more expensive analyses, but they are applied, within some of the residential areas, some of the commercial areas within the Casper Aquifer. So it'd be good to look for those on a maybe a less frequent basis. So in terms of costs, because I'm sure that you guys want to know that, get my notes here real quick. So on a per well basis, the sampling list that I have up there right now would be about $700 per sample. So if we're doing that at say about 25 to 30 wells, 4 times a year, it comes to about $150,000. Well, excuse me, that, and then combined with the sampling, the actual people to sample, the supplies and whatnot, that all comes out to about $150,000 annually. So again, that's why I would look going forward, we'd try to pare that down, maybe pare the list down, pare the frequency down, and the number of wells to sample each year, such that it would be a little more cost friendly in that regard. I would recommend doing passive samplers. We've found that they are cost effective and easy to deploy, and makes for relatively quick sampling events. We would, given our 25 wells, we could probably do all 25 of those with 2 guys, could be done in about a week per quarter. So they're a disposable item is the only thing, so you're paying for those every quarter. They're about $30 a piece, $30 to $40 a piece, so they're not terrible, but when you're doing that through several sampling events, can look like a larger expense. But by the time, if we were to try using pumps, and you're renting pumps to do the sampling, they work out to be roughly about the same, but the amount of labor is less with the passive samplers. In terms of the drilling costs for some of the wells, based it on about $200 a foot, $200 to $250 a foot. So some of the wells that are, 400-500 feet, the EQ number 1 well that's along I-80, that well is 325 feet deep. Water's at about 180 feet. And so as you go up the canyon, so that I-80, the proposed well that Mr. Lockhart was asking about, that well is probably in the neighborhood of 400 to 500 feet deep. So that potentially could be a very expensive well also. And I mentioned those wells to the north, the Turner MW wells, those might be on the order of like $100,000 per well. Some of the shallower wells in closer to town, looking at probably $20,000 to $30,000 a well, something along those lines. So that's why we're trying to use what we have as much as we can, but fill in the gaps with additional wells where it's needed. So, I think that's all I have as a presentation, but I would entertain more questions as you have them.
Okay, questions or comments, councilors? Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you very much for this presentation. You had mentioned before, priority number 1 would be the Turner number 1, I believe.
Yes, in terms of those northern wells, just because it's closer to the well, the existing production wells, and closer to potential contaminant sources.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't remember the thought behind that. Thanks for clarifying that.
Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you so much for all the information. It's really helpful. My question is maybe a broad question, but in your experience with monitoring wells, maybe in aquifer type situations close to cities, what in your experience is the most common contaminant, or is it so varied that that's the point of a network like this? But what would you say, is that factored into the priority list and why you have wells in a certain area?
I would say that it is a varied list. I mean, based on the number of potential contaminant sources. Oops, let's go the other way. So all those the little green dots on this map are potential contaminant sources or existing contaminant sources, and they all represent their own potential analyte that would come, so it could be petroleum products, or it could be nitrates from the septic systems, which I know is a big, hot topic here in Laramie, or in terms of, it could be chloride within some of the, from I-80, things like that, from the salt and some of the chemicals that are put on there. So, yeah, it's a varied list that we would try to, we could vary it from well to well depending on once that, after that baseline, if we start seeing a trend that something is spiking, we could only monitor in that one well. Potentially, if we weren't seeing it somewhere else, then we could definitely adjust that.
Additional questions? I'm just curious, with the recommendation to test for herbicides, pesticides on a 3-year basis, is that because it's less of a risk of entry into the aquifer?
I would say that it's just, it's less used. It's a lower quantity within the system, and it would be something that you would see sort of build up over time. I guess you wouldn't necessarily see a high concentration right away.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Thank you. Councilor Shumway.
You indicated that this would cost $150,000 annually.
Those are our initial costs, yes.
It's my understanding that we have not been doing this intensive a testing program ever, And so this would be a new cost to the people that are water users. And my question is this, why is it that we can't just have why do we have to test water through wells? Why can't we test water that we're actually getting on the surface? It seems like it'd be a lot less expensive to take surface water that comes up, that is pumped up, and see if there's any contaminants there before we start putting $150,000 a year into testing. And it seems like by the more holes, more straws that you have into the aquifer, the more ability there is for contaminants to go down that new hole in the surface. I guess my big question is this: is this a new $150,000 that the water users? Because I would guess it'd be like $100 per household or business that's going to be getting on their water bill. I just want to know if that's something that will be new, or if there's been a previous estimate of what it's been cost to test water out of the aquifer in the Laramie area.
My understanding that, so the previous sampling was kind of one-off sampling events. We monitor the existing wells for water levels, and then we've collected samples in the past, but it hasn't been on a regular basis. So yes, it would be new funds. And I don't know, I believe there are funds set aside from the special purpose tax that go towards aquifer protection, as I understand it. So that's where this money would potentially come from. And to answer your question in terms of why we would want dedicated wells for this, for one, if we were just using domestic, private wells, we don't control those, for one, and so we wouldn't necessarily know that it was an accurate sample. And also, if the production wells are monitored, on a yearly basis as source water before it goes to any kind of treatment. That's part of the EPA sampling, so we sample those ahead of time, or on an annual basis, or actually more frequently than that. In fact, I think it's quarterly as well. So we do have that information, but those are, we would like to have something more data before it gets to the wells, so that before it gets to the production wells, so that if something were to happen, and those production wells aren't as spread out across the aquifer as well. So this would be a more comprehensive plan.
Follow up?
You indicated that the connectivity between the wells is probably within a year. I don't know what we're going to do to stop it if there is contamination anyway. I don't know how we're going to stop if there's insecticides or petroleum-based and things like that that shows up in one part of the aquifer. How do we keep it from spreading all over the aquifer without pumping it and stopping, the source? It just seems like it's the method that we've used is production wells are tested, and if we see contaminants, then we try to locate where, what's in the contaminants, where it's coming from. But I maybe it's just that I worry about a new $150,000 a year cost to the citizens for something that they've never had to pay for before.
I understand that concern. That it is a lot of money. And that was one reason that we would look at, going forward after that 5-year baseline period. We would pare down the number of samples, pare down potentially the frequency, so we could get that cost down a lot lower than the 150. If we only sample a third of the wells, that's a third of the cost basically. So could get it down to $50,000 a year after that initial baseline period. And we could certainly shorten that baseline period. 5 years seems like a good period that you'd have enough data that you could make some trend analysis and be able to make some calls that way.
Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe to Councilor Shumway's question too, got me thinking, if there do you guys provide anything besides information gathering? Like if there were contaminants detected in, maybe one of these farther elevated wells, what can we do? Or is this just to get a baseline information that we can then understand over the years?
Yeah, this would basically be a data collection program, and from there, then that data could be used to initiate, some sort of investigation, and be able to look for other funds that could fund those investigations as well. There's source water type programs and also municipal protection programs that could potentially fund those types of projects.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought I could offer a little bit of context to some of the last few questions that the council had here, and I appreciate Tri-Hydro's first blush at answering those. Let me remind you of a few things that you have already budgeted in your budget, and that will sort of place into context the expenditures made to compensate Tri-Hydro for the work that they've done, and then other budget that you have to complete this goal from the Casper Aquifer Protection Plan. So to have this fully functioning monitoring program and gather the data, as Ryan just described, was one of the suggested work items that the city needed to work on, hopefully in collaboration with our partners over at the county and also with WIDA, as we've heard today, because I-80 is a potential source of contamination. The point of that, as he said, is for data collection. One of the questions was, well, how would we stop the contamination? I think that was Councillor Shumway's question. I have to say, we don't have a full answer here, but one of the things that we've talked about over the years, and you can see that demonstrated on the maps that Mr. Athey showed us, is if we understand that there is a source of contamination and we track that, or we see that pop up in the data that we're collecting from these monitoring wells, it could allow us to alternate where we're which of our source wells we are pumping from, which of our production wells we use. So for instance, if we saw something happening down south near Simpson Springs and we had that well online or planned to bring it online for source water, we could turn it off so we don't suck it up into our system, really, is how me, the non-engineer, will describe that to you. In any case, understanding where contaminants are and if they were approaching a production well is something that we've been told for a number of years we needed to explore. So let's talk about some of the monetary aspects of this. In the budget right now in your water rights section, you do have budgeted $326,546 for the work that Tri-Hydro has done, and then ultimately for well drilling if the council choose to proceed with drilling these monitoring wells. We also have $25,000 in that budget this biennium for hazmat spill emergency response plan, and this ties a little bit into the notion of, well, what would we do if there's contamination found either in the monitoring wells or if we had a catastrophic spill event on I-80. So that's another piece of your Casper Aquifer protection recommendations that we did fund in the budget for this biennium. And then we have a third piece as well. Let me get the right page up here, and that is tied specifically to monitoring wells adjacent to I-80 or within WIDOT's right-of-way. Again, we hope to work with the county on that because we're outside of our jurisdiction, right? So many of these monitoring wells can be in the city, but many have to be outside of the city. So in that third bucket of capital project funding, you have $125,000 funded there. So at least for the immediate future of this biennium, we planned for these expenditures. There is, of course, the ongoing question of $150,000 maybe as an ongoing recurring expense, and Councillor Shumway, you're right to point that out as something that would become part of our operations budget and not capital project specific funding like we have currently.
All right. Yes, Mr. Levine.
Yeah. Mayor and Council, I just want to add one thing. This Friday, there is an Aquifer tour that's happening by two of our local water advocates, Mr. Paul Taylor and Mr. Chris Moody. I've personally done this tour with Mr. Moody before. It is exceptionally enlightening, I guess, and educational on different aspects of the city water system, as well as aquifer traits and anything to do with the aquifer. It's very informative. I highly recommend if any of you can make it, up to 4 of you. But it's this Friday at 8:30 to 11:30, and it could, some of the resources we have in town, including Mr. Taylor and Moody, they could answer you anything on the aquifer. They've worked on this for decades. Like I said, I've done this tour. It sheds a lot of light on the questions that we've discussed. So I highly recommend that. And if anybody's interested, we can get you that information.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you. I do have one more comment. In thinking about this, I think why I'm leaning toward putting investments into this is I think having that data to try to stop something, knowing where it's coming from, to be able to shut off those wells, that sort of thing, it is a big investment. And I am kind of with Councilor Shumway, like, wow, that every year. But if we can have that baseline and get that established, and then maybe see what it would look like to ratchet back, or, you know, every 2 years, every 3 years, something like that, or as big changes to what's being built, maybe we adjust it in that way, shape, or form. But I just really think about the lack of water in other states, and that our river could, you know, as that goes down, I think we really need to prioritize this aquifer for the gem that it is. In the case that the river water goes away, in the case that another state decides they're somehow going to divert our water and utilize it. So I think this is really, I just really appreciate y'all bringing this forward. I think it gives us a lot to think about, and think about how we can do this in a way that we're managing how we spend moving forward. So thank you.
Councilor Shumway.
The comment has come up, thank you, Mayor. The comment has come up that if we have a contaminated area, we just shut it down. I don't think that works. I think that it's not 8 separate aquifers, it's one big aquifer that communicates. And it may take 6 months, it may take 2 weeks, but eventually a contaminant north of town moves to south of town, east of town, and west of town. If we're at a point where we're going to say we're going to have to just shut it down until we can pump it dry and then cut off the contaminants, that may be the cost we're looking at. I don't know how we're going to be able to, just because we locate a contaminated area that we're pumping water out of, shutting that down will solve the problem.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from council? Then I would like to ask if there is any public comment on this agenda item. And Chris, if you could state your name for the record.
Chris Moody. I'm a hydrogeologist, been involved in this since '93. Show of hands, who's coming to the tour on Friday? We got four slots because you can't have a quorum, apparently. Is that the idea? Okay, so Mr. Shumway, the questions that you're asking in large part will be answered, and I think you have some real opinions on what the aquifer is or whatever, and I would love to enhance your understanding of the aquifer. So anyways, we got 4 slots, 8:30 to noon or 11:30. Go as long as people are interested, and there's a big difference between talking about it and reading about it versus seeing it. I guarantee you it will make a lot more sense. And when you see anything brought in front of you, as council members regarding the aquifer, you will be much better prepared at making sense out of the information that's provided and the issues and the topics that are being discussed. So, I've been in this community for 38 years, and it's the first time that this has been offered, a field tour of your aquifer system. Paul and I have done field tours with grade schools and middle schools and high schools, and selected people. But I'm very interested in throwing a wider net to city staff and in particular city council. So it's not that we can't do this again the second time and pick up the other 4 that can, or a tour that is just for city council, you know, whatever works, but that needs to be done. So thank you very much. I hope to see some of you. I think the first spot is to meet is at La Prelle. That's not where we're going to get the job done. We're going to go we'll basically meet there and go, boom, right to another spot. And we'll have 3.5 hours to go to Spur, to go to Soldier Springs, to go where it's relevant to you seeing where your water comes from on the aquifer and learning about the rock and the hydrogeology that makes it happen. So La Prelle Park is the answer to the question at 8:30 is the meeting spot. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Any other public comments on this agenda item? Yes, Dr. Palmer.
Thank you.
State your name for the record, please.
Of course. Dr. Sally Palmer, lived there since 1982 at 715 South 11th. I've consumed Laramie water for a long time. I just want to say in the backstory, my family moved from Denver to Chicago, where the water was terrible. Terrible. So anyway, I'm grateful that you're even looking at this issue, and I believe in the power of handouts, so I brought some for you all. Oh, thank you for getting that. Yeah, because I not only look of where does water come from, but what happens to the water that's here, and that's what that handout is about. When I taught at the University of Wyoming, a course that was co-taught by someone who became the water engineer for the state, Lisa Lindeman. She took us on a tour of toxic spots around Laramie. And once you put something to the aquifer, Joe, you're absolutely right. It's very hard to get out. So for years, the University of Wyoming dumped water into an old mine, and the soil has leaked out. I mean, so I don't want to make this too dismal, but basically, when we look at the whole issue of how do we protect Laramie water, it's not just coming in, it's not just I-80, but this map shows all the gas stations along 3rd Street. Some of them had to close. One of them is still open. It's called Gas and Mat at 3rd and Sheridan. And the pumping is mountainously noisy because they're still pumping underground gases from under the leaks of that filling station. So this is a long-term map, but thank you, Sharon, for asking us to look at this issue. And I could say more, except that it just, well, you know, I've watched water not just, I don't know, not just so I don't have anything to do, but because I know that it is a source of life for us all. So I can give anybody who wants this map. But when we talk about testing, I've walked from my home on 11th Street up to La Prelle Park hundreds of times. But when you test, it depends on where you're testing. what you're testing. So in August, what's called an algae bloom comes up, and you can see, and there's signs usually put up around Lapel Park that say, don't let your dog into the water or drink the water or anything in August, because it's dry then, okay? But the testing that was done by certain engineers was done in December. And so they said, hey, there's no algae bloom here. Of course, because all the algae had died. So I could give you this great map of where does water come from, where does it go. But I want you to know my personal and professional gratitude for saying, wait a minute, we want to look at the science, we want to look at who lives here, and we want to look at the sources of people who draw from the water and take it for granted. Thank you. I'm open for questions, but...
Thank you, Dr. Palmer.
My last hand up. Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any further public comment on this agenda item? Thank you all for attending tonight. We really appreciate your participation and your advocacy of our water. So, back to council, any final comments? All right, thank you. Seeing none, we will go on to our next work session on mosquito control. And Hunter,
I'm happy to introduce.
will you start that, or?
Yes, I sure will.
Okay. City Manager, if you'll start that session, please.
Happy to. Council, as a refresher, of course, we've been in a series of many hours of budget meetings, and mosquito control came up, and it is so timely because, of course, we're in that beautiful, beautiful period of Laramie summer, which is when the weather got nice and the crabapple trees and lilacs bloomed and the mosquitoes have not. So we're in the grace period, but within a few weeks, we'll start to see those critters flying around. So I thought it was very timely. And fortunately, our folks in Parks and Recreation and Community Services were able to pull this together quickly. So I'll introduce Hunter Dearman. He is our IPM manager.
Mosquito IPM manager.
I know. I hate to call you just the mosquito guy because Hunter does a lot of things that include mosquitoes, which is very much on our mind. So with that, Hunter, it's all yours.
Welcome, Mr. Dearman.
Honorable Mayor, Council, thank y'all for having me this evening. Hunter Dearman, I'm the mosquito/IPM supervisor for the city. I oversee mosquito control and also oversee weed control and pests. I will discuss IPM specifically as opposed to why, those terms are used interchangeably, but the more accurate term would be IPM. That way it covers everything that I do, okay? So tonight, I'm just going to go over the City of Laramie's mosquito control program. We have new council members, and so I'll just touch on the basis of everything that we do, a little bit of mosquito ecology, because I feel like, this time of year we get a lot of complaints, which usually stem from misinformation and uneducated assumptions. And so as a researcher, mosquito biologist by research, and I love data, I love, scientific research, so I provide that to people in my explanations as to why we do the things we do. And whenever I came to the City of Laramie, the integrated pest management program was pretty much well put together. So I believe that was started by Keith Wardlaw around like 2015 or so. He did a really good job getting this set up. So it was easy for me. And this was actually one of the reasons why I chose this position whenever I was moving, because it was such a well-rounded program that I wanted to, continue to improve upon. Okay. So I'll go through these slides here. If you have any questions, feel free to, stop me, and then, or at the end, we can go through some things. It's just going to be an overview, but if you want any more specifics about anything in particular, I can give you those as well. Okay, so I've introduced myself there. All right, so what I'm going to talk about tonight, program goals, integrated pest management, our coverage area, a little bit of mosquito ecology. I'll go through exactly what we do as far as each step we take, and then I'll end with questions and my contact info, okay? takes me back to this one works. Okay. All right. Sweet. That'll work. Okay. So the program goals. The City of Laramie's mosquito control program. We have two main goals that we seek to obtain. Okay. West Nile virus prevention and nuisance mosquito reduction. Right. By practicing an integrated pest management approach, utilizing best practices that are recommended by American Mosquito Control Association and the CDC. So integrated pest management, this is a broad term that covers any sort of pest. Okay, mosquitoes, weeds, anything that unwanted, it can be a pest. And so IPM technically covers everything that we do, but people, if you don't understand the difference between the two, that's why we say mosquito control and IPM, when technically it's all IPM, but I'll keep hanging on to mosquito control if I need to. Okay, so IPM, management of pest populations using a system of interconnected control strategies that maintain pest populations, and this part is important, at levels that can be tolerated by humans in terms of their economy, health, and or quality of life. Okay, it's called pest management, not pest eradication, okay, because that's just an unattainable goal. To think you can completely get rid of mosquitoes, not going to happen, okay? And so we don't claim to do that. We do a really good job of getting those populations down to a maintainable and tolerable level, but you can argue the toleration between different people is vastly different, okay? So our coverage area, what area do we have access to? Do we control? Obviously, we see everywhere within the city limits we have access to as far as larva control, adult control, but we also have land outside the city. So as you can see there, we work with some private landowners. We also work on the city's ranches because, we have a couple ranches that we own now. And we kind of update this every year. We reach out to landowners, and currently we work with 35 landowners around the city of Laramie that allow us to come on their land to do larviciding, and we also can spray over their properties as well, because we do aerial applications as well, okay? Approximately 70,000 acres of land adjacent to the city that we have access to. Question?
Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Dearman. Sorry for the question and interrupting your flow, but 35 landowners for private land access, do you need more, or is that a good list?
I'm always open to more, but I would be hesitant to just put it out there to everybody because there are some areas, and if you look at this map here, we have areas to the east of Laramie. Okay, that's up in the mountain. That's not really an area that we're concerned about. And so we do have calls from people down south and to the east of Laramie. They call wanting, control or want us to do larva stuff, but the water's not there. The water's off to the west. So if you have any, landowners out there, I'd be happy to work with those. And we do update those every year. We send landowner permission letters, and those numbers do change. We had one landowner that decided they didn't want us on their property anymore this year, but those things change. So, but yeah, that answers your question. Okay.
Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my question, first of all, I truly appreciate all the hard work you do. I know when the fogging starts in town, I love to wake up and hear that going up and down my street, my alleys. It's a wonderful thing that you do a service for the city. My question, though, is about aerial, where we try to catch mosquitoes that are already airborne, no longer, I think it's airborne mosquitoes when you do the aerial spraying, correct?
Well, we have to. I'll get to that as well in the presentation.
My question is about aerial mosquitoes that are flying. I know that when you fly over, you're going to kill hundreds of millions of mosquitoes, but if the wind's blowing 10 miles an hour, it only takes 10 minutes for another billion to come into town. How do we, is that spray going to be something that will kill them for days, or is it just
Okay, I am going to mention that in here, but I'm glad you brought that up because that is a point that I like to stress to people. Our mosquito population, our mosquito problems do not originate within the city limits. All our mosquitoes are coming from outside city limits. They're getting blown in. And so whenever we do treat, like you said, aerial or fogging, it kills the mosquitoes that are there currently. And our fog does not leave a residual, and it breaks down before the morning. Within a couple hours, it's broke down and it's no more. And so you get another gust of wind coming in, you've got more mosquitoes. So yeah, I do appreciate that comment because that is very true. And that we don't spray anything with residual. So it's just something that we have to live with. But our larviciding operations is the main bulk of what we do, and that is the most effective way that you can treat mosquitoes is in the larva stage before they become adults. Because whenever they're adults, they're harder to treat. And then that's in their dispersal. They're in their dispersal state at that point, and they can fly for miles. And then with the wind behind them, that just pushes them even more. So anything between here and the snowy range can end up in Laramie in a matter of days with the wind and their travel. So that's one of our big problems. I will say, City of Laramie's unique location and environmental conditions, surrounding landscape and resident species just add to the complexity of our program. And so these are the things that I'm wanting you to all to understand, so you can deal with complaints and whatnot. And because you're still going to get bit, and that's for reasons like that, like you said. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast here in Laramie in our unique location, which I'll also discuss the species and whatnot as well. So it kills the mosquitoes that are out when we're out there spraying, but the next wave will be in shortly. So if that answers your question. Okay.
Thank you. Follow-up?
One quick more question. Are honeybees safe from this type of fogging and aerial sprays?
Yes, that's another issue that comes up every year. So mosquito pesticides are formulated for mosquitoes, okay? We have specific droplet size with a specific amount of pesticide, just enough to kill the mass of a mosquito. We also have application times, application rates that affect that as well. There's multiple studies out there. You can check LSU has some really good bee studies. And we also contact bee owners beforehand. We put out PSAs. There are also colonies all within the city of Laramie that are thriving. When used properly, which is why you want professionals applying your pesticides and not somebody from home applications, because people tend to go overkill with that. But when they're applied per label directions, which is per law, with calibrated equipment, which we calibrate every single year, it is non-toxic to non-target organisms.
Thank you.
Okay.
Continue.
All right. All right, so now I'm just going to discuss a little bit about mosquito ecology, just so you understand. Mosquitoes are an aquatic insect. All right, they have a 4-stage life cycle. And one curious point to note is mosquitoes are the deadliest animal in the world. If you ask somebody, you normally get shark or tiger or some other stuff, but it's mosquitoes, thanks to Africa. But it is the deadliest animal, which is interesting. All right, like I said, I mentioned they have 4 stages. They have egg stage. All right, egg stage is in the water. Larva stage, they have 4 different instars they progress through before they hit their pupa stage. And then when they're pupa stage, their body is undergoing reorganization, and then the back splits open and your adult mosquito comes out after that. All right, this is kind of important when it comes to treatment, larviciding, etc. Because larva stages are the feeding stage. So whenever you're putting larvicide out, the larva has to consume it. Okay, so when we're out doing inspections, larva dipping, if we're dipping and we find a puddle of water that's full of pupa, it would be absolutely pointless for us to put larvicide in there. Okay, it'd just be a waste of time, waste of money. Okay, we do have a mineral oil that we could put to kill pupa, but we try to get them when they're in the larva stage. Okay, that's the prime time for treating those. All right, a little bit more about mosquitoes. There are about 3,500 species of mosquitoes in the entire world. In the U.S., we have about 176. 55 species have been recorded in Wyoming, and specifically here in Laramie, from our records, we used to get between 8 and 10 species collected in a season. Okay. And of those species, the majority of those are 1 to 2 or 3 different species, which are considered nuisance species. All right, and very few transmit disease. All right, so yes, go ahead.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping back a little bit. How long are they in the larva stage?
So that depends on the environment. Whether it's cool, like right now. So there are larvae out there right now, but since it's cooler at night, it takes them longer to develop. And they need, also the water in this area isn't very nutrient rich, so that delays their progress. So normally in the peak summer with good nutrients, they can go from egg to adult in about 7 to 10 days, okay? But right now, we're seeing them in the larva stage for 2, 3, almost a month, because they just don't have the resources yet. But when things start heating up and nutrients start, getting in the water, then that's when they'll speed up. So we're collecting larvae now, and we're treating for larvae now, but we're not collecting adults yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so what we do, surveillance, okay? So larva surveillance is the first thing I'll discuss here. So larva surveillance is us out there in our waders with our dippers, identifying breeding habitats. Larva identification, larva surveillance is good for assessing your densities over time. It gives us good data, historical data, and you can also use this to evaluate your effectiveness, and it's a low-cost option. Let's see. So larva habitat identification is the most effective means to reduce overall mosquito numbers and adult dispersal. So this is the bulk of our what we do, and which happens to be out of the public eye. People usually don't see this part of what we do. All you see is us when we're fogging, which is just a small percentage of what we do. Majority of what we do is we're out there, treating for larvae, which you don't see or you don't realize.
Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. Hunter, so is that picture indicative of what happens on private land as well as, city land or public land where you can get any of that water to test?
Yes, so I'll get to the slide here in
Sorry.
You're good, but we have larva sites that we know are going to contain water at different times that we have mapped out. So that's part of the IPM program, is mapping out your locations, and you have that data that you can just hit year and year and year after year. But also, I teach my people when they're out and about, if you see some standing water somewhere in town, if it's not on the map, go for it. There could be a new spot we can add or whatnot, test anything. Same thing on private properties. We'll go out, depending on how big the property is, we'll take some of our ATVs out there and we'll ride around and we dip. And that's how we know how to treat for those larva sites. But it looks the same as that, which is I let them all decorate their dipper and they can take their dipper out and dip away. And then we usually treat at the same time, since they're already out there, especially some of our hard to reach areas, private lands, they'll go ahead and when they get larvae, they record that and go ahead and treat it at that same time. That answer your question? All right, cool. So here you go right there, larva surveillance. So currently we have over 170 sites that we know that we hit regular basis. We have a chart that I have them go through, and they go hit every one of those spots every so often, depending on how we treat it. So we have different types of larvicides, some that last around 7 to 10 days, then we have some multi-breed larvicides that will remain effective in the water for up to 30, 90, 140 days. A little bit more expensive, but they're ideal for some of those hard to reach places. But anywhere in the city, all those little spots there, we'll usually treat with 7 to 10 day, the cheaper stuff, and they just go back and hit it on a periodic basis. So that's larva. And then adult surveillance. So this is the one where you see the traps mostly. We use CDC light traps, which you see in the picture there. They're portable, battery operated, and they were created by the CDC. All right, and these traps utilize CO2 and light as attractant. So when you're doing mosquito surveillance, you're wanting to attract mosquitoes that feed on humans, okay? So we have different species that feed on different types of animals. So if we're out there collecting, mosquitoes that feed on chickens or mosquitoes that feed on frogs, it's not really giving us good, arboviral information. So that's why we use these traps, because it has light and CO2, which replicates a mammal breathing, and that's where we're able to get the more arboviral related species that we're targeting. They'll get everything, but it really targets those that we're trying to go for as far as West Nile virus species. Okay. Now, our adult surveillance, we have 18 sites across the city, and then a few out on the ranches and outside of town that we monitor year after year. We run traps Sunday through Friday. We started them about a week and a half ago, checking them every day. It's good coverage over the entire city, plus the areas that we have outside of town, and this is the data that we use when we decide when we're going to start fogging. Okay, so when we start collecting mosquitoes in those traps across the city, that's when we start our fogging operations. Usually not until June, second week or so of June. It just depends when those numbers pop up. That's part of the IPM approach. You don't just start spraying on a certain date. You start spraying when you get mosquitoes. Okay, we use this a data-driven approach. And currently, right now, we're only getting a few mosquito adults out on the ranch area, and the few species that we are getting are a cold weather mosquito that doesn't feed on humans. So we're not seeing anything as of yet. We are in a dry spell, so I'm hoping that'll kind of be a lull before they pop off. But when the mosquitoes do pop off, they're gonna come in large numbers like they always do. Okay. So our big problem, I'm not gonna say it's a problem, but our big source is the private lands west of town, irrigation fields that they use for hay. And in the city, we also do our own flooding out there, and that's where a majority of our mosquitoes are coming from those, which in those, it really doesn't matter if we're in a drought season or not, they're going to get flooded regardless. And so that's one of the main reasons why we do our aerial applications. We do one large aerial larvicide application about second week in June. Have been talking to the airport and our aerial operator, and we're going to plan that for around June 10th or so. But typically, you looking at our data from the past, our season is pretty regular year through year. We see our initial peak at a certain time, we see a lull after different adult aerials, and then we see a falling off towards the end of the summer. The beginning of the season, right in the beginning of June-ish, when we see that huge spike, we're getting species that aren't arboviral concerns. They're more of a nuisance mosquito. That's the one that everybody sees during the day biting you, tearing you up at, all day long. All right, so I get that one is a nuisance, it's a pain, but it doesn't pose a health risk. It's just more of a nuisance risk, right? So that kind of is one aspect of why we do our program. The other aspect for the West Nile virus prevention, that one comes into play more towards the end of the season. So once our nuisance mosquitoes populations start falling off at the end of the season, that's when the Culex species, one that carries West Nile, it's their time to shine. Okay, they like real gross water that's been drying up, pools that have been drying up from the season, just real nasty, that type thing. That's the type of water that Culex and those are the ones that carry the West Nile virus. Nuisance mosquitoes in the beginning of the season, they all pop off in huge numbers, okay, and clean water, and then they start falling off towards the end of the season. So we get a common question we get asked is, why are we still fogging if there's no mosquitoes out? Well, we're fogging because we're getting Culex numbers in the traps. Culex do not prefer humans, okay? They prefer birds. That's what they seek out. They will, bite you if they're just hungry and you just happen to be in their way, but they're seeking out birds, okay? So you may not feel any mosquitoes biting you at the end of the season, but we're still collecting Culex, and Culex are the ones that carry West Nile virus, and so that's why we continue as long as we do. We stop our fogging when we stop getting Culex, okay? But that's one I get every year is, why are we still fogging? There's no mosquitoes out. Well, there are. The West Nile virus mosquito is out there, okay? Not in as large numbers as the nuisance mosquitoes, but that's just the nature of the species.
Councilor Shumway.
Thank you. I've lived in Laramie long enough to know that the mosquito season is mid-June to the end of July. The question I have is this, and it's just curious. It seems like every year on the 4th of July, Washington Park is free of mosquitoes. Can you explain why?
Okay, so I can explain why the past 3 years it's been that way. So I do. So for certain events, I will make sure that we fog that area, intensely the night before. But I also have a ATV application, some ATV application equipment that I can use usually the day before of an all-natural repellent. It's just natural oils that I go put out the day before, and that helps because the fog that we use, like I said, it only acts for a little bit while the mosquitoes are out. But this repellent it's all natural. Okay, it's just oils. Okay, but it does have some sort of a repellent effect as well, and so that helps with that. But also that same time, July 4th, we do a adulticide the week before. That just happens to be when it falls as well. So after those adult aerials applications, we do see numbers fall. So all the stuff that we do in there is measurable. So the adult aerial specifically, when we know the plane's coming, all our data up until that point, high numbers, and the week after, thereafter, we see those numbers drop. And then for about, a couple weeks, they start climbing up again to our second adult aerial, and then they drop. But it just kind of follows along with the July 4th thing. But we do try to take extra measures to make it more pleasurable experience for everybody. I hope to. Okay.
All right, continue.
All right. All right, identification. This is another fun thing. Well, I'll say fun, maybe not fun for them, but so identification. So every mosquito trap we bring back into the lab, we freeze until the mosquitoes die, and then we dump them out right there as you see, and we ID them. Okay, it's part of data collection, and we have data going back for years doing this method. Because we do what we do in such a such a well-run program, we also do identification for other areas within Albany County. So Big Laramie, Little Laramie, and Rock River all have their own mosquito control districts. Okay, and we provide them traps, and they usually set traps, 2 or 3 traps at each location in each area, with the understanding that they can bring their collections once a week. We'll ID them, and we'll test any of those that need to be tested. And that data allows them to get grant funding, EMAC grant funding, to help with their mosquito control program, because they just don't have the funds to do what we do here. So we do help out in that way, which is I feel like is a good thing to do. And I do meet with them several times a year as well. I provide them, I actually had a drop box made for them so they can just drop off the samples, make it easy and quick for them, because the easier you make collection for people, the more apt they are to actually do it. And they love the drop box, and we've always got spare supplies for them, and I want to just keep this going because it helps us in the long run too when it comes to funding. This is just a little bit of surveillance numbers there just to show you. So these are standardized trap averages across the year, across trap collection, just to show you just kind of our 16-week range of when we get, eaten up by mosquitoes. And it's pretty regular each year, okay? We have certain drops there because of environmental conditions. I mentioned earlier that environmental conditions play a huge part in mosquito control, mosquito species abundance, all right? So you see around week 23, 24, that's the beginning of June, is when we see that initial spike. It's coming. We know the larvae out there, and we're trying to treat everything we can with larvicide, but it's coming, all right? But that's why we go ahead and schedule that first larval aerial, larvicide aerial that we do. It's a big aerial we treat. We put out about 16 to 20,000 pounds of larvicide along the Laramie River and those properties that we know are flooded each year. And that just delays inevitable, but it delays it about a little bit of time. And then at the end of June, we do our first adulticide aerial. And then that's when, you see those numbers dropping off there. And then towards the end of the season there, you'll see they kind of slowly fall off there. But it's a trend that we see every year pretty much, and it's pretty consistent. And this number here is actually, I pulled out the Culex species. This is the West Nile virus mosquito. As you can see, it doesn't peak until later on in the season, and it's a pretty low number, except for 2023. We had so in 2023, across all of the Front Range, everybody saw the exact same trend with Culex in massive numbers, record numbers than they've ever collected. And that was because towards the end of the season in 2023, we had a wet end of summer. And so that just extended their larval environments by a longer period of time. So they were able to reproduce exponentially in a short amount of time. Huge numbers, okay? And then last year they fell off, and last year they were at record low numbers. So all due to the environment, our environmental conditions. So that's just I just thought that was interesting. It's hard. It's hard to predict. Okay, you can't predict the weather. Treatment, I mentioned we do larviciding via hand, ATV, backpacks. That's our main thing that we do there. As you can see some pictures out there of us doing that. We have granular larvicides. Our larvicides are all natural that we put out. It's a bacteria that they ingest. It's non-toxic to non-target organisms. It's really effective in larviciding, in killing those larvae. And we can go back, and when we're putting out this larvicide, we can go back the next day and just see dead larvae everywhere. So we know it works, and we can see it. So that's pretty cool. Okay. And then I mentioned the aerial larvicide. This is the big one we do. We're going to plan that for that second week in June. We usually treat around 4,500 acres of land that we know is flooded during this time of year. It includes our ranches and in the flood zones of Laramie River, but right now our Laramie River is pretty low. It hasn't flooded in certain areas, so we're gonna trim it down a little bit this year. And kind of save some money, but not too much. We're still going to treat those same areas because it's really, if you're treating an area that's dry, you're wasting money, and I don't, I'm trying to do that. Okay. Early season, June, as I mentioned. All right, then the adult deciding. This is what everybody sees. This is what everybody hears. This is what everybody thinks. This is what we do mostly, and it's not. It's actually when you get to this point, this is your last-ditch effort at this point. So that's why we put so much effort into larviciding, because when they're adults, they're so much harder to treat, especially here in Laramie. As I mentioned, I can go into details specifically, species-specific as to why Laramie is unique. But species compositions vary greatly across terrain, across states, across everywhere. So Cheyenne species network is going to be totally different than Laramie's. Okay, so you can't apply measures from Denver or Fort Collins to Laramie, and you can't apply Laramie's practices down to those areas because the species are different. Okay. And Laramie is just a complicated problem. It's fun. It's a fun problem because you can see why we're having this problem. And as you mentioned, this goes back to what you were saying about the wind. We're fogging at night, and then the next day the mosquitoes are back. That's just the nature of Laramie. We have billions of mosquitoes popping up between here and the snowy range, and we can't kill every one of those, and they're headed this way. Okay, the nuisance mosquitoes that we have in the beginning of the season, these are strong, large mosquitoes that can fly for miles. Okay, just themselves. So when you got the wind pushing them, we just got a constant problem. So. Yeah, exactly. And between here and the snowies, there's nothing blocking them. But when they hit the city with all the buildings and the trees and stuff, they just hang here, and that's where we, get our problem. But I do like to do so. That's where we get hit first. Yep, West Laramie gets hit first. But what I can say though is whenever we do start getting complaints, it's measurable the work that we do, because I can go out and do landing rate counts where we go out and we stand there for a certain amount of time and collect the mosquitoes that land on your body. I can go all through town and do landing counts and then go right outside of town, West Laramie, and you can see the difference. It's noticeably different. So what we're doing is effective. It's just there's no way to not get bit. There's just no way around it. But we do a really good job, even though it may not feel like it at times. What we do, I'm proud of what we do. Okay, I mentioned ULV mounted truck foggers. Those are the ones you see. We're using EPA-approved reduced risk adulticide. It's basically, as you mentioned it, or as we discussed, it doesn't last long. It does not leave a residual. When we go out and fog, it only affects the mosquitoes that are flying at that time. Then it dissipates and breaks down within 4 to 6 hours, I believe, before the sun comes back out. And so then you're just free for more mosquitoes to come in. Which is kind of frustrating, but that's the nature of it there. Job security for me, but that's just kind of things you deal with. So I just want y'all to be aware of this, because this is going to go in your toolbox for dealing with complaints. Because I get it. People didn't go to school for mosquitoes like I did, so I don't expect people to understand. But if the more knowledge you can spread, the better aware people would be. And it does actually help some people whenever they do call and complain. I'll give them to Taylor, because Taylor's my full timer, and he's really good with talking to people, and he can explain things, and that's it. They're like, oh, didn't know that. Well, I don't expect you to know that, but I do like to spread that awareness as part of what I do. Okay. And then the adulticide aerial. This is the one that everybody looks forward to, where we treat the area west and north of town, where our mosquitoes are coming from. Okay, this is one we do get calls from about, why are you not spraying south of town? Why are you not spraying east of town? Well, that's not where the mosquitoes are coming from. I know you have some, but our barrier that we're putting up here and the numbers we're knocking down will affect you. You'll see that result of that in a couple of days, because there's not those mosquitoes flying in, and it doesn't last. It lasts about a week or so, and it drops numbers. Anytime you can drop adult numbers, just think of the amount of potential eggs that from, you know, those populations that are not being able to be laid, okay? A mosquito can lay hundreds of eggs, and when they're a really good, you know, well-fed mosquito can lay hundreds of eggs every couple months for this season, okay? But if you kill those adults, that's hundreds of millions that you're preventing from getting laid for next year, okay? So you got to think of it that way as well. All right, we cover about 15,000 acres adjacent to the city for the aerials. It's measurable. In the past, we've only done one adult aerial in the beginning of the season, but I kind of switched that up last year, and we're doing 2 now. We used to do 2 larvicides, and now in 1 adulticide. Now we switched that. We're doing 1 larvicide and 2 adulticides because I feel like that's more effective and a better use of money, and it does save us money. Because if you're doing a larvicide at the end of the season, most of those areas are already dry. You know, why are we doing that? Let's hit them with adulticide that we know are there, and we can see those, you know, feel those numbers drop. So that's one thing I did alter after being here for a year or so. West Nile virus testing. This is another thing that the city of Laramie does, unique. So I will say the city of Laramie's program is unique in the state of Wyoming. There's only about 2 maybe programs that practice a fully integrated pest management approach, and Laramie's one of them. I will say tomorrow and the next day, we are putting on a training for the people throughout the state of Wyoming who do mosquito control in their community. The Department of Ag, they recommend send these people to come see us to do the training. We work with Scott Shell at University of Wyoming, and we do a training for those new people in the program, or people, some of the communities, they'll send their guys just to come learn, you know, about how to do mosquito control, how to do surveillance or whatnot. Because some of these smaller communities, they don't have dedicated mosquito control operators. They have somebody from the water department or somebody from a parks department that just goes and set traps. Well, anything that we can, you know, give them any information will make, you know, things a lot better for them. So I will say, as part of the EMAG thing, that's one of their grant requirements that they highly recommend people who apply to come see us. And we've been putting on this training as long as I've been here and years before as well. So I'm pretty proud of that. We are a model, you know, so I want to keep that bar up there for people. And what we do West Nile virus testing. We have our own ramp testing here that we do. Gets quick results within hours as opposed to days. We can either send your samples to the vet lab and wait several days for you to get your results, or we can do them ourselves. It's cost effective, and we'll know West Nile virus numbers within our mosquitoes that same day, and we can put out our PSAs. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's a good service to have. And we also, since we do the rest of the county's mosquito identifications, we test theirs as well. Makes us look good, and also lowers the burden on the health lab as well. So, and it's fun to do if you like lab stuff. So it's cool data. West Nile virus testing, this is just the past few years, what we've done. As you can see, 2023, that was that huge record number of Culex mosquitoes. Well, we had a record number of West Nile virus tests that we ran. And then in 2024, we had a record low, and we had a record low samples. Okay, that just shows the samples that we tested and what came back positive. And our numbers pretty much fall in line with the rest of the Front Range numbers overall. We don't have as many Culex, which is good, but we still fall within that same pattern each year. This is just a little bit more about West Nile virus cases in the state and county. It shows summer months when the Culex, stuff that I've already shown you, so it shows you that what we do here in Laramie is pretty consistent across the state of Wyoming, what we get, so we know that we're doing everything right. And they started collecting this data in 2016. Although, you know, you can't see it because my whatever's down there coming up at the bottom, but since 2016, there's been over 800 samples tested, and most every one of those were done by us because we do our own testing, which is pretty impressive, and I'm proud of that. And data that we collect also, we upload directly to the health department's website. We have the login specifically for us. We can log our data. So I do that weekly. So all that's up to date. You can look at Albany County's data and rest assured that it is updated every week. I mentioned this earlier. It's mainly a bird mosquito cycle. West Nile virus is. Q-Lakes prefer to feed on birds. You know, crows around here. We don't have chicken farms up here like we do down in Mississippi, but yeah, chicken farms are rough for Q-Lakes. And when I used to work for the health department in the state of Mississippi, we would always investigate every human case, and you'd be surprised how many of them come from chicken farmers or areas adjacent to chicken farms, because that's where those mosquitoes are attracted to. So they're going to head towards the chicken farms. And if you just happen to be in the way, there's a possibility that you can get it. It's readily transmissible between birds and mosquitoes, but West Nile virus is only one way to humans and horses, so we're a dead-end host. So if you get West Nile virus, the mosquito can't pick it up from you and give it to nobody else. All right. Here's the West Nile virus iceberg that I pulled from our West Nile virus support group that we used to do in Mississippi. 80% of West Nile virus cases are asymptomatic. It's a good chance you've had it and you didn't know it. A lot of healthy people can get it and just be down for a few days thinking they've got a summer cold and not get tested. And that's where the 80% comes from. Less than 1% get the central nervous system symptoms, and that's usually older people or immunocompromised people. And a lot of these people don't find out that they've ever had West Nile until they go give blood or something like that. So it's, you know, it's scary, but also at the same time, if you're a healthy individual, I wouldn't panic, you know, because you probably already had it and didn't know it. Something else we do is public outreach. We do Ag Expo, which is all the third graders in Albany County, which we just did last week. They come with a 2-day event where we teach kids about mosquitoes and whatnot. We release PSAs anytime we do applications, anytime we do get any positive West Nile virus samples or anything, we'll post on social media and the news outlets there. So you see some of my PSAs that we've done. Council proclamation that we do in June, which is coming up for Mosquito Control Awareness Week. We'll all show up in here and take a picture and smile. Website, so we do have a website that we update daily. So if you want to know what areas we're fogging, or if we plan to cancel fogging or something like that, it'll be updated daily on our website by 4:30. Also, this applies to herbicide applications as well. Side note, if you want to know what we're treating. So this is a pretty good resource as well. People can go check and see where we're fogging that night or if we have to cancel. So when it comes to ULV fogging, the truck fogging, we can't fog if the temperature is below 50, and we can't fog if the wind is above 10 miles an hour. So that answers your question about why we're not fogging every night, because, you know, Laramie and the wind, that hinders us. Usually we between June and the end of August, we usually get around 30 actual spray nights, which is, you know, not a whole lot, but we can't operate without outside of those legal limits, you know, set forth on the label. The label is law, okay? So if you know the wind's going to pick up or it's going to drop below 50, and then use some mosquito spray, I guess. Yes, sir.
Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Hunter, is that because it's the efficacy of spraying in those conditions, or is it because you could get adverse reactions to humans, or
It decreases the efficacy. Like I said, mosquito or any pesticide in general is formulated to a specific droplet size, to a specific concentration. And if you start messing with those, when you get high wind, it spreads things further. You also got to worry about non-targets. We're trying to spray behind people's houses, around their homes. If you got a 15, 20 mile per hour wind, and these droplets are below 30 microns, you get a good wind, you're blowing, all the way up into the mountains, so it's just part of the application, the precise application for what we're applying for. That answer your question? Okay, and temperature-wise, colder temperatures, it's just not as effective. Your droplets fall straight to the ground. Like I said, non-target, it's just not effective. Next question. Also, I'm available for talks. If anybody wants me to come to their garden club or something like that, or church talk, I'll do those. I like to do mosquito biology, basic mosquito biology talks. I have a bunch of them saved on my computer from previous jobs, so I can do that. Also, I got goodies for y'all. Can you pass these around? So these are some of the kid education things that I put together for the kiddos. So if you have any, miniature humans that you want to give them to play with and give me some feedback on, I'd be glad to take that feedback. I put these together, just a coloring book and some TD Laramie related stuff. Also, my card is in there. If you need to contact me at any point, you can do that, ask you questions or whatnot. So I came up with those. I made a coloring book and then built a mosquito kit just for the kids, because when I found out when it comes to education, kids are better. I'm just going to be honest. When you give a talk to adults, it's in one ear and out the other, or they think they know we don't have to listen to you. But kids, it will stick, and they will run home and they will tell their parents and repeat it over and over again. So I put these together just as something, so if you want to provide feedback on those, I'll be glad to take it. All right, so also as part of the integrated pest management program, we offer a no spray program. It's just part of what you have to offer to call yourself an integrated pest management program. So this is where citizens can call and say, hey, I don't want you fogging at my property. So we log these, we put them in a map, and so when the foggers are out fogging at night, when they get to that property line, they switch the fogger off. And they, keep going, and then they cut it back on as soon as they cross the property line. We often get calls, well, why am I paying if I'm not getting fogged? Well, you're still receiving the benefit. So that's why we don't take off from the mosquito control fees, because you're still receiving the benefit of mosquito control. Okay, if you're fogged. Honestly, fog is designed to travel a couple blocks, but we have to offer that program, and it makes people feel better about what we offer as well, that we actually do. So another thing we'll hear is, we don't tell people, hey, your neighbors are no spray, but sometimes they'll call me like, well, why did you cut the fogger off? Because they'll hear the fogger go off or whatever. That's just a service we offer. Okay. And currently we have 99 properties that are part of this no spray program. And then we also update that every year. We'll send out letters to everybody to reminding them if they want to, sign up or whatnot. So. And also they can go online and get that form and send it to us as well if you want to be a no spray. Okay. All right, and to wrap up, just put this little spiel together. City of Laramie continues to maintain a thorough and effective integrated mosquito management program. Years of historical data reflecting peaks and troughs as well as trap averages that show this current year and the previous years fall in line with each other. While certain parts of town may experience higher densities from year to year, overall the annual patterns remain consistent. Okay, through the historical data, the understanding of mosquito ecology, and the knowledge of species-specific characteristics and interactions, our program measures are supported and our results stand firm against any questions of criticism or perceived effectiveness. All right, we're always available for inquiries, but wanted to pass along this condensed reminder and explain the details that guide our program in hopes that will be another tool available to accurately address any concerns that you have from your citizens. Like I said, you have my card. I can always be reached via email. If you have any questions, if you want to address, any concerns, I can give you the science behind it. Okay, and I will take questions.
Councilor Bowling, did you have a question?
A comment, but so I can
comment. We're taking comments or questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Dearman. Man, do you have a cool job.
I enjoy it.
And having spent a long time in the Deep South, and now I hear Mississippi, I understand where your love for the mosquitoes comes from, so that's really cool. And I don't think that in this budget cycle, anyone's going to take any issue with the work that you do. This is just all really fascinating. And I know that we asked for this so that we could field questions as they come, because they're going to come. And so it's also really helpful that this is online, so we can, this presentation, thank you for that, so we can point to that. And I just want to say, I can see that the plane is a very small, specific thing, so not going to ask to go up in it or anything. But I would encourage you guys maybe to slap a couple GoPros up there when you go up in June and give Owen some information, some content to work with. If that is something that you guys would consider, that could be a really cool content that we can kind of share out. So
okay.
thank you for the work that you do.
I can reach out and see if the plane operator can finagle that. I don't see a problem with that. Also, I will note too that the mosquito control program does have drones. A couple drones that we use. I get contacted by city management and Owen specifically to get pictures here and there and everywhere else. So we do have a couple drones that we can use for certain things if I can fit it into my mosquito schedule.
Councilor Shumway, you had a question or comment?
Comment, thank you. First of all, I want to tell you that you've given me a lot of confidence in our program. Thank you so much for what you do. I just want to say that if my neighbor doesn't want to be sprayed, would you please stop there and back up and do my property twice?
I'll make a note.
Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Hunter, for this presentation. Super helpful, super informative. I'm with Councilor Shumway. Do my house twice. I see, looks like a few of my neighbors might be on that list. I'm gonna re-canvas that area. Just kidding. My question for you is, I don't know if this is necessarily your area, but is there any like tried and true method for like mosquito management just on a personal level? Like, right, you hear about the citronella, the the blah, blah, blah. Nothing works for me except for the hardcore DEET. And I know a lot of folks like that. Is there really anything like that you would suggest?
Right through you. So that boils down to species-specific understanding. So I will say in certain areas, not in Laramie, there are measures you can take, but here in Laramie, our nuisance mosquitoes, like I mentioned, they're very strong, big mosquitoes. It takes a lot to deter them. You can use some of the natural stuff, and I find it works to a certain extent, but I will use heavy DEET, okay, heavy woods. Also, on that same note, if you lived in more populated areas at lower elevations, there are certain mosquito species that basically come from your property itself. They're called container species, and those are very easy to treat on your own property. But here in Laramie, we do not have those species. So you hear people say, you know, put out a bucket of water and put your mosquito dunks. That doesn't work here because we don't have that species that utilizes that bucket, okay? All our stuff is coming from outside of Laramie. It's just getting blown in. So I can't really recommend anything that's foolproof. I do recommend if you have a lot of trees or bushes around your home, if you want to trim those up. I don't know if you noticed last year, but we trimmed a lot of trees up in the parks. That allows for wind to pass through. Because if you don't have that, they will get all in those trees and just linger there. So if you walk past a tree, they're coming out at you. But if you can get some wind flow going through there, it'll help push them on through to the neighbor.
Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Hunter. It's blowing my mind, like all the behind-the-scenes stuff that you do, and you're very passionate, which we appreciate, because if you have passion towards something, you're going to do it right. And I'm hoping there's lots of people that are going to watch this on YouTube or whatever, because we get lots of questions, all of us, about, you know, when are they going to, they complain, like they're not spraying enough, or what are they doing? And like you had mentioned, just a portion of it is the fogging. There's so much behind the scenes to get to that point, right? So I appreciate the explanation. Also, why do mosquitoes bite my wife and not me?
So mosquitoes are attracted to certain chemicals in the body, and you know everybody has different chemical composition that we can't detect ourselves, but mosquitoes can detect it on that level. Yep. Some say there's a few studies out there that suggest it could be related to your blood type. The ones I've looked at are not real convincing, but lactic acid, body heat, body odor, your CO2 production. That's why a lot of pregnant women get a bit more so, because they have more mass, they're breathing heavier, and they have more chemicals coming off of them. People who work out a lot will produce more lactic acid, which is an attractant. Heavy breathers. So it just really comes down to your own personal chemical effervescence.
I kind of heard that, but I figured
you're the expert. Yeah, that's what it is.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Hunter. This is just great. It makes me also wonder, like you almost need your own channel for the season to like do a daily update to keep people kind of notified of what's happening. But I'm also wondering about, you know, back to kind of the social media side of things and like an FAQ with Hunter Tierman sort of thing, to these the questions that you always get that come up. Just tossing that out there. The other question I have is council available or able to tour your facilities and see like the science side of things and like do all the investigations and see what that all looks like. I would love to see all that.
I would love for you to come see our new lab space. So part of some of the capital improvement that you approved last year before last, was to upgrade our lab space. So now I have a brand new lab space, a fully enclosed, clean lab space where we can do some of these things and not worry about contamination or dust or, damaging our expensive equipment. I'd be glad to, walk you around and show you the behind the scenes. I would recommend you wait closer towards end of June when we have massive mosquito numbers, so you actually have something real cool to watch. But yeah, just reach out, and I can make myself available.
Is that on 4th? Is that the 4th Street building?
1268 4th Street.
Okay.
City Manager.
I wonder if I could ask a question of Hunter. It has been a number of years since we had a really bad West Nile year in Albany County that I was aware of, at least, but I did pull up the state surveillance and I saw that in 23, Wyoming's population incidence was way higher than the national average, and that was an atypical year. Why was that?
We had a larger number of mosquitoes that year. That was
Just
our
weather?
spike. Yeah, the weather, environmental conditions. Also, the bird and mosquito cycle historically has been kind of cyclic. So every few years it peaks, and we're kind of up on an upper right now. So it kind of falls in line with just the mosquito numbers and the birds. And we can kind of see that with bird populations as well. So if you need to know the bird population is being, is falling, we can pretty much expect that our West Nile virus is falling as well. So recently we've had a lot of bird flu and avian flu, whatever, that will contribute to lower West Nile virus numbers. But for that year, we kind of attributed to just the massive number of mosquitoes, because it really doesn't correlate with, we had a record number of mosquitoes, but we didn't have a record number of West Nile virus. It was a high, it was a peak, but it just comes with the territory of having more mosquitoes, more chances.
Thank you very much. This has been most informative. And I think this gives us something that we could direct people toward, but I would love for Owen to take a look at this and to see what he might, or if he would work with you, Hunter, in putting a video together that we put out there, because this was just really informative, and it gives us a good foundation for understanding what's going on and all of that work that's invisible that we don't see.
I appreciate it. I would definitely be open to something like that. And, education.
Yeah.
That's the way you got to do it.
It was very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next, are there any comments from the public on this agenda item? Yes.
Mayor, we have Jamie Eagle.
Oh, okay. If you could let Jamie in the room. And Jamie, if you can you got your camera on? Yep.
Hi.
Good evening.
Thank you for recognizing me. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much. My question is the aerial spray. Is that still malathion, or is there another chemical that's safer for humans and riparian and aquatic animals?
Mayor, through you.
Yes.
Malathion we have not been using. We use Dibrom. It's more safe for non-target organisms. As part of our West Nile prevention plan, we do have stipulations in place if we do have an outbreak of West Nile to use malathion, but we do not go to that. Let me ask Scott. Scott, do you know last time if that was even used, or was it used?
Honorable Mayor.
Yes, Scott.
So in conjunction with your aquifer protection plan and whatnot, back in, I think, 2015, 2016, the City of Laramie Parks Department looked hard at all the chemicals we were using as part of that aquifer protection plan. And that was about the time that we started changing directions into the chemicals that we used. So I do believe the last time we actually used malathion was probably around 2014, 2015.
Great news. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to add on to that too, we do take into consideration species present. So I don't know if you're aware of Wyoming toad population that we have here. One of the EPA mandates is, to not use malathion, and we respect that. So we do take all that into consideration when we are deciding our chemical usage. And dirom seems to be the most effective and least that affects least target organisms, especially bees, because we have a lot of beekeepers in the county. So yeah, we do take that into consideration. I appreciate your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further public comment? All right. Then that concludes our work session. Thank you very much. So next we will go to City Council updates. And who's ready to start? Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. There's no new updates as of today, but tomorrow I believe you and I have some Traffic Safety Commission interviews for hopefully 2 more positions to be filled in the Traffic Safety Commission, which is really exciting. And then Thursday, the Ranch Advisory Committee is doing a walkthrough at the Monolith Ranch and Old Bath Ranch for our new folks, including myself, to go take a look. I think Ben will be there helping run that. So really excited to go walk around. And then I guess on Friday, I'll also be taking a walk around the Aquifer. So I'm really excited about that. So those are my updates. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. I have none. The last few Planning Commission meetings have been canceled due to lack of topic, and then the Albany County Tourism Board meeting, the most recent one, was also canceled because there was not enough for a quorum.
Oh.
So it's been easy peasy for me.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I've had a few meetings recently. Beautification Committee met, and they are looking at, in conjunction with Main Street, potentially, this is not a done deal at all, but lighting for downtown, some kind of permanent lighting for downtown that is can kind of withstand the weather and be hardy enough for around here. But those are just very beginning talks. Pilot Hill, they have broke ground. They're continuing to move forward and are thinking about how to make sure that they function in a sustainable capacity as they move forward over the next 10, 20, however many years. DDA has brought on a new member, and so we will be meeting again in a month, and I think get started on kind of an RFP. And then Main Street met as well. They are just kind of in the midst of planning for some of their summer events, and they had also are working with Laramie Public Art to try to determine if they can get the funding for the Our Town grant back, because that was cut at the federal level. And so I can't remember if I shared that last time. I think maybe I did. Anyway, I think that is everything. Oh, I will not be in town next Monday for the next Main Street meeting. If there's anybody who would be willing to cover for me, if we could talk afterward, that would be great.
Okay. Councilor Shumway.
I have no new updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Vigil.
Thanks, Mayor. I just have a couple. LPAC's next board meeting is next Tuesday from 4 to 5. And then I just realized I had signed up for the Aquifer tour, but that's right smack in the middle of a town gown subcommittee meeting. So I'm going to have to join the next tour. So yeah, there's that. And then LCCC Advisory Council, I have a couple engagements for that, right at the end of summer. So I'll keep everyone updated on those pieces.
Thank you. Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Mayor. None at this time.
What? Nothing?
None at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Newman, do you have any updates? It's good to see you. Or see your name. Okay, I see none. My updates include the airport board met on May 14th. They gave a report on the mock catastrophe drill that they did, and they had about 20 volunteers plus infant mannequins simulating a catastrophic event, and then emergency management people then come in and score that, and they did very well on their response. And that was quite something to put together, and Daniel and Kate Allard pulled that together. They did incur a direct lightning hit out at the airport, caused some systems damage, but that has all been taken care of at this point, and the hangar leases have all now been finalized. So that was really good news. On May 15th, I attended the First Street Parking neighborhood meeting from 11 to 1, and there's an awful lot of interest and a lot of people making, I think, really good comments about the plan. So I see the community really contributing to that process. Then that afternoon, Board of Health, we did not wind up meeting because we did not have a quorum at that meeting, and that was a special meeting because we'd missed quorum before. So we're beginning to look at the structure of that and if it makes sense as a city council commission, or is there another way that we might want to structure it, or other functions that we might want to do. So that'll be the next step. On May 16th, a group of us from the Housing Coalition Partnership Action Subgroup met as a writing team. Emma Dixon, Fred Schmeckel, Aaron Olson, and Brad Enzi and I. And we met to put together the Albany County Housing and Land Trust to work up the initial working drafts for articles of incorporation, bylaws, and executive director description. And we got it all done in about 3.5 hours. So that was fun to all work together. And then this past Thursday, I have the privilege of attending the Relative Theatrics Will Bowling playwright performance with our vice mayor as one of the MCs. And I'm telling you, it was a moment of just sheer joy. It was joyful. And the friend that I went with, we just couldn't stop smiling and laughing. And our own director, Bork, was a wild and wacky bus driver. And I just to have the imagination of a 4th or 5th grader again. It was amazing. And so tomorrow, traffic safety will be meeting to try and find a couple board replacements. And that's it. And I think, Vice Mayor, did you forget something?
Sorry, I did not, but Councilor Newman said that his microphone is not working. He has an LBCA meeting tomorrow, if anyone can cover for him. If you guys will just maybe text Councilor Newman and let him know to work that out.
I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's at noon. I'll text.
Okay.
I'll check
Perfect.
my schedule.
Thank you.
And City Manager, you had something?
I did, actually. I have an update for you. So we will be very soon, in the next, I think, week or two, integrating our volunteer software with UW. And so this is really going to open up students to, hundreds, maybe thousands of people to volunteer opportunities with the city. So my office, we're working on coordinating with departments to identify volunteer opportunities that maybe, can do projects out at the PD or something of that nature. But I wanted to mention that to you, council, as well. Maybe ask that as you go about your board and commission meetings, maybe brainstorm with your boards, or if you have ideas, if you would send those to Brandon Moen in my office or to me. And we are going to kind of create a catalog of those and hopefully be ready to post some really cool volunteer opportunities for our community members, but also university students now that we've integrated our software platforms.
Councilor Shumway.
Mayor Cumbie has a letter from a group called Just Serve that would like to be included on that list if they're not already on there, because they have several volunteers that in the past have put a lot of time into city projects. So if you could share that with, I think you might already have that. If not, get with me and I'll get you more information on it.
Thank you.
That's a good suggestion. Thank you. And was anybody available for the LCBA?
Mayor, I'll just mention, I also am the staff liaison to that board, so if for some reason counselors aren't available, I'd be happy to give you an update later.
Can you remind us what time that is?
Noon.
Noon. Look real quick.
I could do noon. I'd have to leave early because I have to be out at the MOC at 1:30, but I could stay until...
Mayor, I believe those Traffic Safety Commission interviews are at 1 p.m., just so you know.
Oh, 1 p.m.? I can't do it then.
I can do it.
You can do it?
I can do it tomorrow at noon.
So we have someone, and what was the other meeting? There was LCBA and somebody asked for another one.
I've got it.
Oh, you've got it. So we've got the two meetings covered. Thank you. I appreciate your professionalism and in taking care of that. Councilor Shumway.
I had a conversation today, someone saying, does the city have anything going on this housing problem? And I was unaware about the housing coalition that you have with Brad Enzi. Is there any way that we can make that available? Because I think that's outside of the committees that we have, but I think there's a lot of interest in people finding ways to give us some help with housing.
Yes, and...
Would they contact you or Brad Enzi or who?
Well, yeah, they could contact me and I could put them in touch with it. It's an open group and I have given regular reports. It's that group that's been meeting for almost a year now and will be meeting through September. And we have some final projects that we're bringing together. And that's the group that's divided into 4 subgroups where we're looking at regulation, we're looking at finance, we're looking at community partners in action, and code, I think, regulation. And it's the 3rd Monday of the month at noon at LCCC, room 108. And if they'll contact me, I will get them on the email list that goes out to everybody that can provide all of the information. Rebecca Miller is currently serving as the facilitator to bring the whole group together. But it's an open group. Anyone interested is welcome. We are toward the ending of our work, but we still have months of work to do, and any contribution is welcome. I think that's, is there anything else? Then I think our meeting is finished.
Agenda review.
Oh, yeah, of agenda review. What would I do without the crew? All right, so early earlier, when I reviewed the agenda earlier today, item 17, take a look at the consent first before I get ahead of myself, and tell me if there's anything that you think needs to be moved. Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question. The rail yard, is that a new enterprise moving into that building where Compost formerly was? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anything else? Then, on the regular agenda, item 17, which was on the consent agenda, adopting the Wyoming Region 3 Hazard Mitigation Plan 2025. I just thought that this was an important item for the public to be, kind of that behind-the-scenes stuff where they're aware of the work that goes on for us to maintain preparedness in our community. And so I asked the chief if we might bring it to the regular agenda so that the public can hear about what happened. And so he agreed, and our own Kate Allard is going to come and give us a little update. We do have a request that, in consideration of Kate's time, could we move item 17 to item 12?
Yeah.
Okay. We are in agreement, City Clerk. So with that done, are we finished? Then, for real, this meeting is adjourned.